Hi, friends. My name is Eric Ode. I am a children's author and a poet and an educator and a songwriter. And thanks for stopping by. As a children's author and poet, I get an awful lot of opportunities to provide author visits for schools and libraries and community festivals. And when I'm providing those, I love to share poetry. I thought what I wanted to do today was help kind of bring forward some ideas to how to really make poetry pop. And what I mean by that is finding ways to make poetry interactive and fun and something that you can easily implement into your story times. So for starters, I thought that I would begin by talking about like the possibilities of taking your time with a poem and going back over it two or three times to talk about like things like especially dynamics. And so, for example, if I take a poem, this is out of a book of animal poems, of animal poetry from National Geographic, and here's a poem called "Happy the Ocean." It's by Anonymous, who happens to write a lot of poems. Um, and the poem goes like this: Happy the ocean. Angry the ocean in hurricane season. Peaceful the ocean, its white caps napping. Gloomy the ocean as sky mirrors darken. Sunny the ocean, yacht riggings snapping. Blue-green the ocean in deep, shallow waters. Moody the ocean, gone mad in a minute. Busy the ocean with cargo and cruises, happy the ocean with dolphins in it. Well, I can think of a number of things you could do with this poem, but one thing you could do is just discuss with your kids the kinds of feelings that you hear in that poem and how the next time that this poem is shared, that can influence how it is read. So we could, for example, we might add dynamics that start with angry the ocean in hurricane season, and peaceful the ocean is white caps napping. So there's just a start. And again, it's just a matter of kind of taking your time, sort of having the faith that the kids will go along with the ride on that and want to talk about what kinds of feelings they're getting and what sorts of emotions are lying there. One thing I provide often when I'm doing author visits for schools, a lot of times I will use poems as a riddle. And so, for example, and Valerie Worth is great for this. So if you grab a Valerie Worth book off of your shelf, this one happens to be All the Small Poems and 14 More. And Valerie Worth, if you know her work, she writes these wonderfully extended metaphors. And what I would do is I would tell the students, okay, I am going to share a poem, but I'm not going to tell you what the poem is about. You have to listen and you have to guess. So listen for clues and you might figure it out. And maybe I'd give them a clue. So for example, maybe I would tell them, well, this is a poem about an animal. You have to guess what animal it is. And if I cover my mouth like this, it just means I'm not going to say that word because I don't want you to know what the poem is about. I want you to guess. Under a maple tree, the lies down, lolls its limp tongue, yawns, rests his long chin carefully between front paws, looks up, alert, chops with heavy jaws at a slow fly, blinks, rolls on his side, sighs, closes his eyes, sleeps all afternoon in his loose skin. And you might have guessed that that's her poem about a dog. That's a dog poem. And that also works really nicely with one of my own poetry collections is this collection. This is a book called Otters, Snails, and Tadpole Tales, Poems from the Wetlands. It was a collection illustrated by Ruth Harper, and it was published by Kane Miller Books. Oh, this time I brought with me the dragonfly of silence. So my dragonfly, I will place over my mouth if I don't want you to know that word. Here we go. The and her kin sneak about in slimy skin, and as for status, live within the family amphibian. which simply means, so I've been told, their skin is wet, their blood is cold. And further, if I understand, their home is both on pond and land, which I declare seems rather grand. And though there may be creatures grander, let me simply say with candor, I adore the... Did you guess that one? It was the salamander. The salamander and her kin sneak about in slimy skin. All right. So those are sort of using poems as a riddle. Often, of course, I'll also use poems in an end, kind of an end rhyme close activity, like CLOZE activity. This works especially well for AABB rhyming poems, where one rhyme immediately follows the next. Oh, here's the Night by Myra Cohn Livingston. And this is in the book Bees to Trees, reading, writing, and reciting poems about nature. And if I say, for example, the night creeps in around my head and snuggles down upon my bed and makes lace pictures on the wall, but doesn't say a word at all. There you go. So that's just kind of that's asking the students to, or the kids to guess what word is coming up and anticipate by listening for the rhyme. A lot of poems work really nicely for sound effects. So this is the poem Counting Sheep to Get to Sleep, out of the book Where is the Night Train Going? Bedtime Poems by Eileen Spinelli. And I chose this one because the word sheep comes around pretty frequently in this poem. And I thought, well, why don't we just go ahead and add a sound effect? And every time we hear the word sheep, we should probably add a sound effect, like maybe a baaing sound. I'm sure the kids would come up with that on their own. So here we go. So listen for the word sheep. The first sheep jumps the fence and then turns around and jumps again. The second sheep won't jump at all. The third hides in the horse's stall. The fourth sheep eats the scarecrow's hat. The fifth goes dancing with the cat. The sixth one drives the farmer's truck. The seventh sheep quacks like a duck. Quack, quack. The eighth is late. The ninth pours tea. The 10th climbs into bed with me. The next time I can't get to sleep, I'll try warm milk, not counting sheep. Okay, so that's one way of listening for a good clue. And how about another? Why don't we do another sound effect sort of a poem where, but this time we're just going to naturally listen for what kinds of things might make sounds. So I chose a poem called Storm Warning, also in Where is the Night Train Going? So Storm Warning. And I think if we just listen to the poem, we'll figure out what kinds of sounds we can add to the poem. When the storm comes, we will run to the house, slam the door, slam, peek through the curtains, peek, jump at the thunder, jump, screech at the lightning, hide under the covers, shiver, and giggle, hee-hee, together like cousins. Mother will bring steaming hot chocolate and slices of cake. We'll have a party to the tune of the rain when the storm comes. So let's also do one where we'll listen for cue words. So, for example, how about we choose something? This is out of Douglas Florian's Beast Feast. And of course, it's a collection of poems about different animals. And he has one in here on the ants. And so the word ants comes up here pretty quickly or pretty often. Why don't we choose a way to respond to ants? And since there's always like a lot of ants in a line, how about whenever I say ants, we follow with ants, ants, ants. We'll try that. Ready? This is a poem called The Ants. Ants, ants, ants. Ants, 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 are scantily half an inch long, but for their size, they're very strong. Ants, 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 tote leaves 5 times their weight back to their nest at speedy rate. They walk on tree limbs upside down 100 feet above the ground, while down below beneath a mound they're building tunnels underground. And so it's been and it will be since greatest antiquity. All right. Of course, there are a lot of good poems out there that are made for, or at least really good poems that could be used for movement activities. So this is Douglas Florian's encyclopedia. And for example, if we do his poem, The Whirligig Beetles, well, especially for younger kids, this would be a lot of fun because I'm sure they could figure out what to do with a poem that says, we whirl, we twirl, we skate, we glide, upon a pond or lake we ride, we swim in circles like little toys without the wind-up keys or noise. Well, that's the entire poem. So we'd probably share that poem a few times. And as we're sharing it, we'd come up with actions and different movements. We can get up on our feet and we can whirl and twirl and pretend to skate and glide. Share a poem with you called The Fiddlehead. So this is The Fiddlehead. And of course, it's a poem about fiddlehead ferns. And we'll just listen for keywords and we'll figure out what kinds of movements go along with this. So, nimble little fiddlehead, nuzzled in a fuzzy hug, dreamer in a mossy bed, curled and cuddled, soft and snug. Stretch and catch a sunny spark here where other leaves are basking. Sleepy little question mark, how I wonder what you're asking. So we could come up with all sorts of different kinds of movement for that. Nimble little fiddlehead nuzzled in a fuzzy hug. We can get ourselves into a little fuzzy hug. Dreamer in a mossy bed, curled and cuddled, soft and snug. And it says stretch and catch a sunny spark, so we can stretch. And it says sleepy little question mark, so we can curl up and pretend to go to sleep. So again, that's out of my own Otter, Snails, and Tadpole Tales poems from the wetlands. Sometimes it works nicely to find poems that have a lot of repetition and just let the students learn the repetition. So for example, here's a poem called The Lighthouse. The Lighthouse, and that's also out of Sea Star Wishes. And how about when I raise my book up in the air, your job is to say house, house. So this is a poem called The Lighthouse. Light house, bright house, sturdy red and white house. You know what waits beneath the tide. You know where rocks and dangers hide. Find the ships and steer them wide. Light house, bright house, watchman of the night house. There you go. A lot of poems out there that have repetition, either single words or entire refrains. I think the last thing I'll mention to you is the possibility of just letting students get creative. This was a suggestion that a friend of mine, Jane Heitman, she's a librarian out in South Dakota, recommended to me. And that is that especially if you grab a collection of themed poems, like an anthology. For instance, here's Marilyn Singer's Wild in the Streets, 20 poems of city animals, or here's the collection selected by Barbara Rogoski of winter poems. And you could just share a lot of winter poems or insect poems or ocean poems or whatever you want. And while you're sharing the poems, the students, you can have drawing paper and crayons or markers or colored pencils or whatever available, and they can just be listening and responding to what they're hearing, what kinds of things you're imagining, where are they, what do they see, and they can be drawing while you are sharing multiple poems from a themed anthology. Okay, I think that's about it. All right, again, my name is Eric Ode. Thanks for sticking around for a little bit. I hope you're thoroughly enjoying the gathering. Thank you for all you are doing, and keep in touch. Let me know if I can answer any questions for you at all. All right.